This video and the article that we're going to look at in it could be seen as a study as to how the media portrays things, which I thought was interesting to go out there and talk about because this did cause a little bit of a kerfuffle on the Pittsburgh Penguins subreddit. Today, we're heading over to Pennsylvania and talking about the captain of the Penguins because when it comes to Sidney Crosby, we have ourselves an article published from the Hockey News that talks about a comment made by a certain NHL insider. Take a look at this. Insider says that Sidney Crosby is sour at the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, firstly, I love that adjective, sour, because it allows me to use gummy bears in the thumbnail and I feel pretty good about that. Look at all the colors. Isn't it not cool? But of course, the article's title implies a very distinct sort of emotion that is held between Sidney Crosby and the team that he plays for. An NHL insider believes the future between Crosby and the Penguins is not that clear. Now, let's go out there and read what Nick Horat ends up writing about the piece and who exactly this insider is. I will say, though, before we dive into it, even though the article says in the title that Sidney Crosby is apparently sour at the Penguins, the first two paragraphs go out there and say pretty much that, hey, the most likely outcome here is that Sidney Crosby will sign his extension when free agency opens in 2024, and everyone can put their theories and pleas for him to leave the Penguins to rest. Until pen is put to paper, though, there will be speculation about Crosby's future. There was a little bit of contention that I saw people talking about, oh, why are articles like these getting written, etc., etc., and really, that's just about it. That's why. Sidney Crosby is signed at $8.7 million a year till the end of 2024-2025, and in the summer of 2024, that is when he'll be eligible to sign an extension. The fact is, even though it's likely he does it, it's not done yet. So, because it's not done yet, there is a very brief window that has existed for quite a few years now that says, hey, we can discuss the idea of a Crosby situation where he is not with Pittsburgh. We've made videos about Vancouver, we've talked about Colorado, Montreal several times, and we have chronicled the apparent frustration that he felt after the Jake Gensel trade back at the trade deadline. But now, this article goes out there with a new source. Despite the likelihood of Crosby sticking around in Pittsburgh, insider Darren Dreger questions if Sidney Crosby will have a change of heart. Dreger joined the Barn Burner podcast and took a stab at guessing what may happen this summer. Included is the video clip from 3 days ago where Darren Dreger makes an appearance on Barn Burner, and the Twitter video says it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with Sidney Crosby this offseason. Dreger in the video says, I can't wait for the end of the year media scrum with around Sidney Crosby. I want to know if he's going to declare that he's coming back to Pittsburgh, and he doesn't want to have to deal with this in the offseason. The article then goes over and talks about some of the other things we've heard about, how Elliot Friedman said that there's apparently a $10 million price tag floating around there as to whether or not Crosby could stick around in Pittsburgh, if that's actually going to happen, etc., etc. Dreger, though, he goes on to speculate that Crosby may avoid questions regarding his future in Pittsburgh, saying that he may need time to think about things. If he does that, Dreger said, we're going to have a hell of a July 1st free agency frenzy. It's going to be buzzing. And this is where the piece goes out there and hits with the dagger. Even if Crosby doesn't sign a contract this July 1st, he won't be a free agent. The Pens have him under contract through 24-25. Dreger was sure to make note of that one more year, but still speculated about what may come after. Imagine if a player of that magnitude were to consider chasing the cup, Dreger said. He's definitely sour at the direction of the Penguins. And that is where the title of the piece comes from. Oh yeah, Dreger said that Crosby is definitely sour with the direction the Pittsburgh Penguins are going down, and quite frankly, I don't think that's all too much of a disagreeable statement. It's a fairly, let's just say, rational take to be having that, yeah, Sidney Crosby is apparently sour at the way the Penguins are trending, and that's not too difficult to understand why. Now, whether or not the sourness would be enough to make him want to go somewhere else, that remains to be seen. Of course, the contract has not been signed yet, and it cannot be signed yet, so we have all the room in the world to speculate until July 1st. But if it does get to that point, Dreger does make a point to make it known that if it does happen, it would be crazy, and this is where we start to talk about the floodgates. Hey, Sidney Crosby's dad was drafted by Montreal. He grew up a Habs fan. Oh, he's playing on a team that doesn't have any prospective future of being able to contend in the next few years. Why does he not go to Colorado? He can play with Nathan MacKinnon, the Cole Harbour boys doing their thing. Crosby, MacKinnon, 1-2 center punch. Even if he doesn't get a huge contract in 2025, honestly, Crosby could sign for whatever gosh darn money he wants, and it would make sense. If he makes $8.7 million a year on his next contract, that makes sense. If he makes $10 million a year on his next contract, that makes sense because he's totally worth it. If he makes less than that, if he decides to go smaller, it may be because he decides to leave and goes to a cup contending team. Either that, or he gives the Pittsburgh Penguins the biggest discount possible, which wouldn't really seem like a possibility since he's already taken a huge discount at $8.7 mil for the past few years. But either way, Crosby and his future will always be in contention for discussion as the year goes on. It's just now that we're seeing more insiders bringing it up. Darren Dreger saying, yeah, this could be crazy. He's sour at the direction of the Penguins. It doesn't really add anything new, I think, to the conversation about Crosby, but at the end of the day, it is some food for thought. So if you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the idea of Sidney Crosby potentially pulling a Johnny Gaudreau. You know, that's the phrasing that we're going to start using for it now. I think it used to be the John Tavares, but now it seems to more so be Johnny Gaudreau, because when Gaudreau left, he went to a team that nobody had any idea why he went there. As for Tavares, I mean, he went to Toronto, so that's easy to see, but yeah, could Crosby pull off a Johnny Gaudreau? Is it a possibility? And another question for the Pens fans, is there a chance, let's say Crosby does not sign a contract on July 1st. Let's say he drags this out Draisaitl style. Let's say there is no contract in place for 25, 26, and beyond for the entirety of the 2024-2025 season. Do you trade Crosby at the deadline next year? Do you consider flipping him away? Because he's one of the game's best players over the past 20 years or so, and if there is not a guarantee that he's going to stick around and he doesn't leave the door open for coming back, do you take the risk of letting him go to the end of the 2025 season without a contract extension, potentially going to free agency, and potentially leaving you hanging out to dry? It'd be one thing if he told the Penguins, oh yeah, I'm going to re-sign, just gotta wait, I don't want to negotiate in the season, etc., a la John Tavares, but if there's really no concrete idea floating around saying that he'll come back and he doesn't want to re-sign, then I think you kind of have to trade him, right? Don't make that same Brad Treliving mistake of letting Johnny Gaudreau walk for nothing, but either way, if Crosby does get traded, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What do you think the price is going to be? What do you think the team that grabs Sid the Kid for the end of 24-25 is going to have to shell out? Multiple firsts, multiple prospects, multiple roster players, and where do you think that team is going to be? Of course, that is just some extra speculation there sprinkled on top of Darren Dreger's comments saying, oh yeah, it'd be interesting if he left, it'd be interesting if he didn't sign, and he may want to leave because he's soured on the direction of the Penguins. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire Crosby conversation. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.